And also to be hearing about the new life that is offered to us in Jesus through the sacrament of baptism. But there's more going on here than simply reading the opening narratives of the Bible and also the opening narratives of the good news of Jesus. This is a church holiday called Baptism of the Lord. It's a holiday that's always marked on the Sunday after the Epiphany. The Epiphany is the day after the 12th day of Christmas, so if you're counting up, that would mean that today's like the 14th day of Christmas. Epiphany is whenever we celebrate the arrival of the Magi or wise men who came to worship and also to bring gifts to baby Jesus. And so basically, like today is like the first day that I don't judge you for taking down your Christmas decorations too early. From a theological sense. I'd say just keep them up, you know. But anyways, whenever we mark this holiday, it should be important to us. It's important in church tradition, but even more importantly, it's important in meaning. And yet, it might be one of the lesser known church holidays. Last year, after we celebrated it, a certain longtime church member, even a church leader, came up to me and said, I never heard of Baptism of the Lord Sunday before then. Well, we're so glad that we get to celebrate it together today. A certain low church Protestant scholar stumbled upon an Orthodox celebration of the holiday and exclaimed, "This holiday is more important to them than Christmas or Easter." I don't really know about that per se, but it is still an important holiday because whenever we look at this particular holiday, we're celebrating the baptism of Jesus, but what we're actually celebrating is this concept of heaven meeting earth. And in fact, we're coming to the end of a series of talks about what happens whenever heaven meets earth. Whenever Jesus descended to the earth over 2,000 years ago, the boundary between the two, heaven and earth, has been just absolutely ripped open. And we simply can't put it back together. Now, in the case of baptism, we're not just talking about like a theological ripping of the heavens and the earth, but an actual, real, physical one. Everything is different as a result of Jesus coming to the earth. Jesus makes earth look a lot more like heaven, but in the case of baptism, again, it's not only a symbolic ripping, but we actually are narrated in his baptism how the heavens burst open. We read, while he was coming up out of the water, as in while Jesus was coming up out of the water, Jesus saw heaven splitting open, and the Spirit, like a dove, coming down on him. So, heavens ripped open, no longer able to contain the Spirit of God. And then a voice, one from heaven. It was as if the words that David spoke so long ago were finally coming to pass. Whenever David said, "The Lord's voice is over the waters. The glorious God thunders. The Lord is over the mighty waters. The Lord's voice is strong. The Lord's voice is majestic." And yet, in baptism, that voice is less strong and more nurturing. More nurturing whenever we hear that voice from heaven who says, "You are my Son, whom I dearly love. In you I find happiness." Now, this might have been spoken from God the Father to God the Son almost 2,000 years ago, but God is still speaking it today at baptism. Yes, God is still saying today, "You are my child, whom I dearly love. In you I find happiness." You see, at baptism, it's the love of God that breaks forth from heaven down to earth. This is what's going on whenever we gather together to celebrate baptism. This is what's happening. The love of God, which can't be contained, which can't be kept in heaven, but must come down to God's dearly loved children. I was talking to someone this week who just found out that I had a kid, and that made him recount what was amazing about his own time spent with his newborn. He talked about how it was just amazing to him how a kid could pick up on their parent's voice, even from a distance away, even whenever the parent was outside of the kid's line of vision. And yet that doesn't feel so amazing at all to me because, the child has to know the parent's voice. It's exactly like that with us and God. We can hear God. We can understand God's voice because we are His children. You might not hear distinctive words. You might not hear distinctive words, but emotionally, you can intuit what God is saying because that message from God to us is love. And so, whenever we are baptized, we're in very good company because it's really just like Jesus, we are baptized. We're only doing something that He has done and told us to do. We join in the ranks of Jesus, and really He's joining in the ranks of us because Jesus steps in and joins in the crowd who was standing with John the Baptist in need of redemption, even though Jesus needed no redemption Himself. Yet He gives in, yet He is baptized so that we can be just like Him. So why baptism then for Jesus if He didn't actually need it? Well, so we could see the way to God, so that we could know how to claim our part in God's household. Jesus shows us the way. So if you've never been baptized, get baptized. Let's talk about it. We can talk about it like right after this time together today. And if you've been baptized, then remember your baptism. If you were as young as little baby Brittany, whenever you were baptized, then you might not actually remember your baptism, but you can still remember what it means. Look, we're about to share in communion in just a few moments together. Whenever we do, we're going to say, take, eat, remember. Even though you weren't physically there 2,000 years ago, whenever Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper, we still say, remember, because we can still remember what it means, and we can still remember that God is not only with us, but that God is for us as well. We can remember that God is still showing up today, even in this place, right here, right now, through sacraments of baptism and communion. So, know that you are God's dearly loved child, and know that in you God finds happiness. Look, I usually want you to do something, and you can get baptized, so that is something to do. But even more important than doing in this case is knowing. Know that you are God's dearly loved child. Know that in you God finds happiness. And know it more than intellectually, but know it on a deeply personal level, deep down inside of you. Know it and feel it. But the truth is that none of us have fully received that love that breaks forth from heaven down to earth in baptism. None of us are always listening to that voice of God that says, you are my child, whom I dearly love. In you I find happiness. And so for the times that we have set aside God's love, I invite you to now join with me in the confession that'll be in your bulletin and also on the screens.